Hello, my name is Sheila and I would like to welcome you to my podcast All About You. I love to listen to podcasts and especially conversations with famous people. However, I think everyone has a story to tell. Maybe a place you have visited, a hobby you enjoy, or anything that you feel would be of interest. I want to have conversations with lots of different people and hear their stories. So if you have a story to tell, please contact me on my email allaboutyoupodcast@yahoo.com. Welcome to the All About You podcast. My guest today is Robin McDonald, who after obtaining his degree in food science and management and having worked in the sector for over 20 years, realised he wanted a change. So he trained as a coach, then set up Robin McDonald Coaching in Glasgow in 2020. As well as working with private clients, he has been working with forward-thinking organisations who want to develop their employees using coaching. He has also been working with teachers in Scotland, supporting their well-being during the pandemic. Robin also works with the charity Exceptional Individuals, where he coaches adults with neurodiverse conditions as they go through job seeking and career change. Before we start the conversation, I just want to say a huge thank you to Robin, as this will be the third time of recording the podcast via Skype. And each time, the recording quality has not been of the calibre I would want for Robin or the listeners. So thank you for your time and patience, Robin, in getting this right. And fingers crossed the stars will align and Skype will work in our favour.
Absolutely, fingers crossed.
Okay, Robin, so can you start by explaining what coaching is?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. I guess for me, coaching, it's a sort of a developmental approach, if you like, to learning and development. And it's there to assist people, or clients as we would call them, to get from where they are to where they want to be more effectively than if they were to work on their own. So it's from getting to A to B, but we would just sort of discuss different options, different ways of doing it that perhaps the client hasn't thought of before, or maybe didn't have the courage to do before. And within the sort of the safe space that coaching provides, allow them that opportunity to do so.
So, Robin, who would use a coach and why? Is there a typical client or?
I guess traditionally, coaching has obviously been for sports teams and sports professionals, but also, I guess, career executives, sort of leaders in business will have used coaches. Now there is a huge drive to bring coaching into everyday life, to make it more mainstream. Obviously, there's life coaching that people might be aware of, and career coaching, but it's actually to take away, by making it mainstream, I think it's to take away some of the taboos that maybe are around it and making it more available to people. I think if we look at the States, it's much more, people are more comfortable saying they're going to go and see a coach or a therapist. Likewise, in Europe as well, people are more comfortable with that. But in the UK, there's perhaps still that stigma that really what is coaching, particularly what is life coaching? Why do I need to see a life coach? Why do I need to speak to a neutral about what's going on for me? Surely I can sort these sorts of things out myself. But the space that coaching provides is such a powerful tool that it can be transformational if people allow it to be.
So what sort of things do you help people with? What sort of issues? I'm trying to avoid the word problem, because it's not necessarily a problem, but what sort of things do you help clients with?
I guess, particularly just now, the main one has been confidence. I think that people's confidence have taken a bit of a battering in the last 12 months for various reasons that ultimately are driven by the pandemic and changes of circumstances. People are questioning whether they're in the right job, the right company, whether they're living in the right location, whether their lifestyle is right. So work-life balance is coming through strongly. The type of jobs that people are doing is coming through strongly. Confidence is coming through strongly. But there's things like communication. People might want to improve their communication, talking to their partner, talking to their boss, talking to their team. People want to maybe use it to establish goals. Maybe they've got a huge goal that they want to achieve. They've not known before how to go about doing it. Again, the pandemic has maybe brought some of these life dreams to the fore. You live in Spain. There's maybe other people now, Brexit aside, that are thinking about let's have some sort of lifestyle change like that. Now, what can we do? And maybe they just need to speak to somebody neutral to help them unlock some of those thoughts and to give them that safe space just to be able to explore different things without having just that courage to speak to somebody neutral. I think is such a powerful thing.
I think it's very interesting when you brought up the pandemic, because everybody has had to adjust to a new way of living. We've had homeschooling, we've had working from home, people have been in bubbles, caring for relatives, this type of thing. We don't normally in our day-to-day life, I don't think many people probably sit down and assess their life, as in what is working, what isn't working, because often we're just too busy doing life to actually take a step back and think about it. And maybe the pandemic, because we have had extra time, we have had extra time at home with our families. I guess a lot of people are now going to be thinking, okay, I've actually quite enjoyed working from home, or am I really happy in my job? And as you say, I think it's given a lot of people a little bit of breathing space to actually think, are they happy with their life on a general basis?
Yeah, I think that, and they're using this opportunity now just to start again, if you like, or press the reset button. But also, interestingly, it's great that we're now all getting vaccinated, and things are slowly going back to a new normal. But lots of people are also quite concerned about that as well. On several levels. They don't know whether we're going to have another lockdown or not, whether there's going to be another spike. So people are concerned about new variants coming in. But also, they don't necessarily want to go back to the way it was. So I think some of them are actually scared and nervous that they go back to, within 6 months, they're back to living the same life that they were before, having that same dull commute where it's just dead time, working for an employer that maybe aren't appreciating them, or in a job that really it's not meeting their personal values or anything like that. So people are just coming into it from so many different angles just now. It is quite interesting.
I think as well as human beings, we like to be in a comfort zone. And all the time we're doing our normal routine, our normal life. Okay, it may not be perfect, but we're comfortable with it. We know what's going to happen. There's no huge surprises. However, going out of that comfort zone, and as you say, maybe thinking about, am I in the right career? Am I in the right relationship? Mm-hmm. That takes a lot of faith and courage to address those things. So, Robin, can you explain what a typical first session would be for a client?
I mean, again, it's a good question, and sometimes clients can present themselves with what would appear on the outside to be a similar challenge or a similar issue, if you like, that is going on for them. But when you start peeling back the various layers of the onion, if you like, there are different things that are ultimately, quite often, going on for them. But I guess, typically, if somebody was to come and choose to work with me, one of the things I like to bring in early, if I can do, because ultimately the client is driving the conversation, so it may not be the correct window to bring it in. But if for instance, the conversation allows it to, we're really having a sort of a deep dive into what's going on, I'll try and get them onto personal values and what's important to them as a person. Many people don't really take the time to evaluate what is important to them. They don't really look at what their personal values are. They might think they know what they are, but actually when you put somebody, if you give somebody an exercise to maybe explore that and to think about it, more often than not, there will be one or two surprises at least that will come up that I wasn't actually aware that was a personal value of mine. And people, for instance, let's say that they're now in their 40s, They may have gone to university, got a degree, and then got a job based on that degree, and they're still living their life as if that was the goal they'd set way back when they left school and left university. But of course, as you go through life, things do naturally change for all sorts of reasons. You might get married, you might have kids, you might have changed location, you might have actually just changed jobs yourself anyway and have been promoted on the corporate ladder. And without actually understanding what is actually important to you, it's sometimes difficult to be able to then guide people as to what they want to do. So, for instance, if you're not a particularly competitive person, if that comes out in your personal values, you then might want to question why somebody is in a sales environment where it is ultra competitive to go out and get the sale, or if they want work-life balance and they want to spend more time with their family, what is it that's driving them to have this job that is a 3-hour commute, or they're away from home for a couple of days a week? So what is it that we need to be looking at? Is it the job? They might say, well, it's work-life balance, but it might be the job that's the issue, or it might be something else. So by exploring that, personal values and strengths as well as another one we might explore fairly early on, it then gives us a better understanding of what that person is all about and what they might actually deep down really want.
So the values exercise, Robin, if I understand this correctly, is about knowing yourself and what is important to you. And I guess what's important to you in your work and career may be slightly different to what's important with your family. I'm thinking of the example, somebody's prepared to work away from home and maybe earn a really good salary, but he's doing that or she's doing that because they can have a good standard of life for the family, have the things they want, and maybe the holidays, etc. So the value in your career might be, let's go for it, and Monday to Friday I'm going to work flat out, because at the weekend I've got the money to pay for someone to clean my house, for example, cut the lawn, so that I can spend quality time with my family or on hobbies that I value.
Absolutely. It's about bringing into the people's consciousness that, we have choices, and we are responsible for the choices that we make and the actions from that. So we choose to have that job where, we've got a very good standard of income that allows us to have those holidays, and it allows the kids to pursue all sorts of weird and wonderful hobbies, and they go to great holidays, and the kids maybe go to private school and all of that stuff. So they have a choice to do that, and if that is part of what they want at this stage in their life, then great. But it might not be, and it might be actually, it could be having a detrimental effect elsewhere, or there just might be other things that they need to be aware of. And I think values, they're very much like a compass. We use a compass to be able to guide us to where we want to go. If you think of the sort of classic navigation, personal values are no different to that. We have to use them as our compass. So where is our true north? Where are we supposed to be heading and pointing? Are we actually living the life that we want, or are we living the life for somebody else? Who are we actually trying to please? Is it ourselves? Is it other people? Why am I in this role for this period of time? And if they want to change lifestyles or change career, what sort of plan are they going to put in place to get them there? So it might not be an overnight thing. It might be 5-10 years, whatever that length of goal is. But it's about making people aware of the choices that they're making.
So how do you actually do this values exercise? How does it work?
I mean, there's various ways to do it, and I guess different coaches have different approaches. For me, I start off with I have a list of sort of common values, and I ask people to pick 10 values from that. But I also invite them to think of other ones as well. If there's a value on there that I haven't thought of, they're more than welcome to bring that to the exercise. So it starts off that they would whittle down, they would get to what their 10 values are, and I'll then ask them to whittle it down to their top 5 and why that is. And then from there, if they then want to extend it further, I have a couple of other exercises that build on that. One of them is a theoretical question that I will ask them, where I'll ask them, for instance, one of them is, if your house was burning down, which items would you save? And it wouldn't include family members or pets, so they would be taken care of. But which values, which items is it that you would save, and see whether that relates to any values that they might have. And there's a couple of other sort of similar things that I have with that. And then again, there's a third layer to it where I will ask them whether, through doing that exercise, whether any of their values have changed and why they've maybe changed. And I'll also ask them to think of a person, dead or alive, doesn't have to be fake, it can be anybody that they want, and to explain why that person is important to them, and what values do they have, and whether they are replicating some of their values or those values in their life as well, or how we can go about doing it.
Wow, so there's several parts to this values exercise. I mean, I was just thinking when you sort of said, if the house was burning down, what would you grab? My initial reaction to that was passport and credit card. Not that the passport would get me very far at the present moment, but so to me that indicates my love of travel, which, yes, is one of my values.
It just goes to show just how thought-provoking and powerful the exercise can be. And what I've discovered is, and I think other coaches find the same, is that when you get people onto values and they perhaps haven't thought about it before, actually just how thought-provoking it is, and just how it then reappears further down the, because often people will contract for up to sort of 6 sessions. So typically people will contract anything between 1 and 6 sessions, and we'll find that even when the conversation has maybe gone to another subject or another aspect, that values still raise their head within it, and it comes back to, well, what is important to you?
So, Robin, I think there's a lot of misconceptions around coaching. Often, if somebody wants to improve their singing, they'll get a singing coach. If they want to improve their tennis game, they get a tennis coach. Nobody would query it. However, particularly I think in the UK and conversations I've had with people about coaching, it's basically, okay, so you're not capable of solving your own problems, therefore you have to get somebody to solve them for you. Or you want to try coaching, well, what is wrong with you? Do you come across that sort of response when you talk about coaching to people initially?
I do, and I guess I would have to put my hand up and say, previously I would have been maybe in that bracket as well. And if somebody told me that they were speaking to a life coach, I might think, that's what else is going on there, but not from a curiosity coaching perspective, just from just a puzzlement as to why anybody would want to speak to a life coach. So I don't like to call myself a life coach. I just like to call myself a coach. And I think when we break down that barrier as to it's not taboo, it's not sort of hocus pocus sort of stuff, if you like. It's actually a professional way of developing people, and particularly if organizations start embracing, I think will be a big win. The people, like they're going to speak to HR or they're going to speak to occupational health, can just book an appointment to go and see their workplace coach. I think would be a big win. And I think we look at the States and we look at Europe, I think that's beginning to appear in these places. I think the UK needs to start embracing that, because just even half an hour, 40 minutes with a coach can be quite transformational in that sense, in terms of it can just unlock some of the thoughts that you might have. So I think for me, if people can maybe think of coaching as a thinking partner and somebody just to help you process what is going on your mind and come up with and using that safe space where it's non-judgmental, it's not biased. The coach ultimately won't know the person in front of them. They'll know a little bit from the questions that they've been asking, maybe some of the exercises prior, but they're anybody, and just using that space just to listen to them, to help them process what's going on, I think will be that's the way to go in terms of trying to get people to think of it as a thinking partner. But I think the more people that reach out for coaching, I think that the easier it will become, and the less stigmatized, I guess it will be. But yeah, it's something that, you know, as coaches, we're aware of. I probably wasn't aware of it before I became a coach. I guess I would have had my own bias, thinking, because I never went and spoke to a life coach before. But through this process, I now use coaches all the time. You know, I'm regularly speaking to other coaches to help me think about, you know, what I should be doing. So it's interesting.
If you go to the doctor, you go to the doctor because there's a problem, and the doctor will say, where does it hurt? What's the pain like? How long have you had it? Quite simple questions. Yeah, I've had the pain 2 weeks. It hurts here and it's a stabbing pain. Okay, here's a prescription. Take these tablets 3 times a day for 5 days. It's quite a straightforward transaction in probably a majority of the cases. With coaching, I guess it's you as a professional know how to ask the right questions to get the answers that are already probably in your client. You just need the right questions to bring them out, rather like if your house is burning down and you had to pick 2 items. Okay, for me, that clearly said travel. And I guess with the coach, because of your training, you know the right questions, and they're not necessarily going to be a yes, no answer. It's going to be let me think about that, because they're probably not used to having these questions asked to them directly. So therefore, they haven't got answers readily available that they can say, right, this isn't working, that isn't working.
No, absolutely. I think you've hit the nail on the head with a couple of things there. You know, if you go to a doctor, you'll get something tangible in a prescription, and then you go and get the medication. With coaching, you know, you can speak to a coach, and at the end of the session, you might not get anything. You know, you might not get an exercise to do or a model to follow, but you'll just get more clarity in terms of what it is that you want. And often, the magic of coaching actually happens out with the coaching session. So we would have a session today, perhaps, and we would come up with a plan that you're going to follow between now and the next session, which might be 2-3 weeks away. And in that time, you're then reflecting and you're trying out new things. And some of the things that we have discussed in the session may become more apparent. You know, you might think, actually, you know, the coach has awakened something in me there that perhaps I wasn't aware of before. And so, so often, you know, if people are looking for something tangible and an instant remedy, then coaching perhaps wouldn't be the right option for them at that point in time. But if they allow the process, and it's a bit corny, but to follow the journey, then, you know, you'll ultimately get to where you want to do. But it has to be driven by the client. You know, the client is in complete control of the process. The coach is just there to really facilitate the thoughts and to reawaken some of the things that are within the client. You know, it's ultimately it's the client's journey. You know, with coaching, the client has the answers and the coach has the question. Whereas if you look at sort of a consultancy relationship or therapy, it's the other way around. The consultant or the therapist would give you the answer. You've got the question. So it's the reverse psychology of it all, that you actually, as the individual, have all the tools and all the answers within yourself, and the coach is just helping you to get to where you want to get to.
With you, you're not going to come away from the coach with, okay, I've got a to-do list of 10 items to do before I see you next week. But what they're probably going to come away with are, Robin's mentioned this, and that came up, and I need to think about that. They're literally going to create their own to-do list of things they want to think about. Maybe they want to journal, maybe they want to talk to a family member. And I can really see the benefit of talking to somebody who is not related to them, because I often think, if we've got a problem, sometimes we can talk to family members and our friends, but sometimes it's better to talk to somebody who has got no emotional connection to that person, and you probably will be far more honest, particularly if you've got issues you want to talk about regarding relationships. It's probably much easier to talk to somebody who's got no emotional connection to actually sort out, you know, what can be done, what's the issue, a plan to take it forward.
And if you think, in times gone by, people would have gone and spoken to the village elder, or there was somebody, I guess, within their community that they could have gone and spoken to. But life has naturally changed for, I guess, all the right reasons, if you like. But there isn't necessarily that facility for people to speak to somebody neutral. They might have 101 friends on Facebook, but actually only know 5 of them. So we live in this social media world where we're possibly making comparisons to other people on social media who are presenting their best life, but you never see a version of their worst life. And people will often compare their worst version of themselves to this version of somebody else that they probably don't even know, or they possibly don't even know, who might not be telling the truth when they're putting up all these pictures about themselves and how wonderful their life is. And it's just, where times have changed. And I think, with that, the need for people that are neutral, I think is hugely important.
I think it's very interesting you brought up social media, because I really believe with social media, proceed with caution, because as you say, everybody is sending their best self. They are not showing the sink full of dirty dishes, the nappies, the report that they're having to stay up till midnight to do, etc. And I think this can be very, very dangerous, particularly for young people who think this is reality. I mean, I would hate to be a teenager in the era of social media. I would just absolutely hate it.
No, I agree. And, I likewise, I didn't grow up in that era either. And it's taken me a while to get my head around social media as a coach. As a coach, I need to be using it to try and engage with potential clients. But it is an awkward one, and I don't particularly feel comfortable myself doing it, to be my authentic self all the time doing that, because I'm aware that it is a bubble that gets magnified, and and other people, they rightly or wrongly, people do look at it and use it. It's an incredibly powerful tool for many reasons, lots and lots of them good, many of them bad as well. And it's about it's just being aware of the power of social media as well, and not comparing yourself to the Joneses next door, because they've had a fancy holiday, but we don't know what struggles they've had to get that fancy holiday. We don't know what's going on behind their closed door. So live your life, rather than trying to live somebody else's.
And I think as well with social media, you can see how a lot of people are having problems with their confidence levels, their levels of their ability, their levels of maybe their earning power, that they're measuring themselves against somebody else. Because I think we tend to always compare ourselves with somebody. Are they doing better than us? Are they slimmer than us? Are they more beautiful? And all this sort of thing. And I think maybe as we get older, we sort of drop the comparison a bit more. Are you finding you're getting people coming to you now with more issues regarding their self-belief, their confidence?
I certainly think so. I think, again, we've spoken about the pandemic quite a bit, naturally, because it's around us, and it's been a constant in the last 12 months. Also, people are now more aware of their mental health as well. It has brought it to the fore. It has also allowed people to be comfortable talking about mental health, which I think is a really good thing, because we all have it. We all have good days and bad days. Some people have them more than others. Some people are easier at expressing when they've got a bad day or not. And again, through coaching, it just allows people just to have that safe space just to talk about it. Now, more often than not, we're not trained mental health practitioners, but we might be able to then signpost them to maybe say, perhaps you need to be speaking to somebody else, perhaps you need to be speaking to a doctor, perhaps you need to be speaking to a therapist or whatever it may be. And I think as part of the coaching process, professional coaches in particular will often, within maybe an introductory session or the first session, be able to assess whether actually coaching is right for the client. Maybe coaching at this moment in time isn't the best thing for them, because it is, even though there are similar things to counselling and therapy. a coach isn't really there to deal with the stuff in the past. If there's heavy duty baggage, for instance, that it's about looking ahead. So it may well be that they want to see a counsellor and a therapist in conjunction with the coach, or there's perhaps maybe something they need to do beforehand. And as part of the coaching process, it might be addressed that there's maybe some other things that person needs to address.
So, Robin, can you tell us some of the success stories you've had with clients?
I've had, I've had a few recently, and there's been people that have come to me that have gone on and got new jobs, even in this period of time. I've had people that have been more confident, that their confidence has increased. My work with the teachers just now is eye-opening as well, and some of the things that they have had to cope with and manage throughout this period of time, in terms of homeworking and managing their own family and home life, as well as teaching through digitally teaching, and without the technology necessarily there to support it. Different kids are going to have different learning styles, possibly a different level of affluence within the family. So some kids have got access to a laptop and a mobile phone, maybe other kids haven't, and how they've gone around trying to get through and get over those challenges and to get over those hurdles, if you like. And some of the great work that they've been doing that if you were to ask them 12, 18 months ago, is certainly not core to their role, and actually given them, by having these sort of coaching conversations, increasing their confidence, saying, I've done a really good job in this last 12, 18 months that nobody knows about. Not even my boss knows about some of the things that I have had to do to overcome, and just getting the confidence just to be able to talk about it. So we spoke about communication and being able to communicate better with partners and bosses, to give them the courage to set some time aside to speak to the head teacher or the deputy head, whoever they report into, to have these conversations with them. Say, are you aware that I've done these things? And asking almost like a reverse journal to say, why not just within the next sort of 2-3 weeks between sort of now and our next session, why not write down all the things that you have done that nobody else is aware of, or all the things that you have done to keep your classes going, or to be there for your students when there were different mechanisms of doing it before, that you've had to adapt to what you're doing, and just sometimes just little things can have the biggest impact.
I think that's very interesting what you say there, because I think we generally, as human beings, we're quite good at sort of beating ourselves up when we've made a mistake. Mm-hmm. We're not very good at giving ourselves a pat on the back when something has gone right. And I know myself, if I do something wrong, it really can put me in a downer. If something goes right, I'm like, oh, that went well, mm-hmm. That's it, move on. As opposed to really celebrating our wins and putting the losses or the errors in perspective. Okay, it didn't work out, but is there something I could do to make it better next time? What lesson have I learned personally? I think sometimes we need to shift that focus on, and I've heard stories of families sitting down at night, going round the table. Okay, everybody, what was one win today? What went right? Something that made you smile, something made you laugh. And I think that is brilliant. And if you can do that as a family, or even to yourself, because there's a lot of people still self-isolating, what went right today? Maybe you made yourself a really nice lunch. Maybe you went out for a nice walk and the birds are singing and the flowers are coming out. We need to celebrate our wins more, don't we?
We do. And I don't know whether it's a British thing. And, we are largely fairly modest. And, we don't like to, we feel awkward and uncomfortable about celebrating success, particularly if we only think it's a small success. But just thinking about you talking about that family that ask everybody around the table what was good about your day to day. I think back to when I was growing up, we had a family dinner every night. We didn't have the TV on. Possibly some of that has been eroded over time as well. It's maybe because generally both people in the relationship are now maybe working as well, so they're a bit more time precious. So maybe they haven't got the time, or they don't necessarily recognize that they've got the time to be able to do that. So just sort of putting in wee things like that, how about having a family meal once or twice a week can actually have sometimes a big impact as well in terms of work-life balance. It could be that somebody's working away from home for a couple of days a week. So actually, why not have Friday night as your pizza night? Why not have something in the diary that you'll look forward to where you don't have the TV, you don't have mobile phones, and you just talk. Heavens forbid, just talking. And sometimes people they do know that, but you just have to awaken it in them. Say, yeah, you know what, that's a good idea. Why don't we do that?
Robin, what advice would you give to somebody who is thinking about coaching? Maybe they just want to dip their toe in and get in contact with a coach. I mean, what would happen in that initial phone call?
I mean, I think if you are thinking about wanting to work with a coach, then that's great. I mean, we spoke earlier about having that courage and that confidence to do that. And that often in itself is actually the biggest step for somebody to do. Research, obviously, who the coach is that you want to speak to. Some coaches have a specialism. Others don't. I don't particularly have a specialism. I'm comfortable working with everybody. But no, there'll be some coaches that are just specialists for women, for instance. If there's a particular female issue that they might want to talk about, and I respect that they might want that. So do the research as to who they want to speak to. Reach out to the coach. Often coaches will put in a complimentary session, or a chemistry session. They'll call it something. Say, look, there's sort of 30, 40 minutes worth of time. You just talk to me, ask me questions. They might give them a couple of exercises to do prior, just to unlock, so that we can lead into some coaching conversations. And then a person shouldn't feel obliged to work with that coach, because it's all about rapport at the end of the day as well. So you've got to feel comfortable that you can work with that person. Often they say that 6 sessions is the optimum number of sessions to be able to unlock whatever it is that's going on for you and to reset your path. But sometimes that's a bit of a scary number to people. I think, there's not 6 sessions worth of issues or problems for me. So just have 1 or 2 sessions, see how it goes. So just build things up sort of nice and gently and do it that way. Because again, if people book 6 sessions with me, I'll hold that block open for 12 months. So they shouldn't feel any pressure to have to see that coach every couple of weeks or every week, whatever it is that they decide is important for them. It's really very much an individual thing. So be careful with that, and also be very careful in terms of picking a coach that has relevant qualifications and insurance, because sadly coaching isn't a regulated industry. So you could wake up tomorrow and decide to call yourself a coach and work as a coach. So try and pick somebody who is, got the right qualifications and the right insurance as well behind them. I think that's hugely important, because then you know that you are working with a professional coach.
So Robin, I will put all your contact details on the podcast. But for you, during the pandemic, have you started doing more sessions with people via Skype or Zoom?
Yeah, I mean, it's all been via Skype and Zoom. So I guess when I did the training, I was in the mindset that I would be doing more face-to-face coaching, and it'd be maybe a localized thing. So through the pandemic, it's actually highlighted to me just how global coaching is and how my coaching can be taken to all 4 corners of the world. So for me, actually, in terms of coaching, the pandemic's actually been a really good thing, because it's forced me to embrace digital coaching, which for me is actually now probably my preferred way of doing it. Obviously, it has to be just now because we can't meet people face to face. But I do think going forward, that would be my preference for people to speak to me about, because not only that, it allows the client to be somewhere of their choosing where they can feel comfortable. Because again, a whole part of the coaching process is the client needs to feel comfortable. They need to feel that they are able to speak to this person. So if they can zoom in from their own home and then maybe have their pet with them or whatever it is, just somewhere where they feel relaxed, more or less a time of their choosing within reason. So I think digital coaching might actually help to break down some of the taboos that are around it. You don't have to go and meet somebody in a coffee shop or an office or wherever it may be. So I'm actually really enjoying doing it this way in terms of my marketing and trying to sell. I mean, I don't like to use the word selling coaching because it seems a bit too cold. And we're trying to sort of, I guess, go away from that. But ultimately, no, it is a service I'm trying to sell that to people. That digital coaching might be something that is for you to sort of just think about, rather than coming to see me. Then yeah, just let's do it like this, and it saves a lot of time. You feel comfortable, and yeah, that. But again, have a taster session with people is important.
I think it's interesting what you've touched on there. When I began this podcast, I had visions of myself running around Valencia with my microphone and my headphones. Due to the pandemic, everything has gone online. Mm-hmm. And I've been doing podcasts with people in America, in Spain, in the UK, Australia. That wasn't on my radar at all. And people are approaching me to come on the podcast, which to me is just blowing my mind. And the fact it's going out, I think, to about 9 different countries. None of that would have happened if it hadn't been for the pandemic. And I think it's so interesting what you said there. People can be in their own home, sit there with a cup of coffee or a glass of wine, instead of going, as you say, to an office or somewhere that is totally unfamiliar. And that has got to be better for them. They're in their own environment. I mean, I'm sure you're working in evenings and weekends. Mm-hmm. And they feel more comfortable. They can see you on the screen. It's not that much of an intimate setting. And, they could literally cut the call at any time if they find it gets a bit uncomfortable. So for you and I, the pandemic has just taken your coaching and my podcast to a whole new level that we hadn't even considered.
Oh, absolutely. And it's fantastic that you're now getting approaches from people from all over the world to be part of the podcast, and that people are listening to it. But absolutely, I guess if you think back 2 years ago, if you wanted to see a coach, for me in Glasgow, there's maybe 10, 12 coaches in Glasgow you could go and speak to. Now, I can certainly speak to anybody in the UK. I actually don't get that many inquiries from people locally. It's from England predominantly that people are picking me up from. Obviously you found me in you're in Spain. So yeah, so your choices are now endless. Before you had maybe half a dozen or a dozen people to pick from. And, it'd be hard to go and build up that rapport, understand, whether that coach is right for you. Whereas now you can just have a quick 15, 20-minute Zoom call. That, yeah, I like Robin, but he's not quite right for me. I'm going to go and work with this person actually down in Cornwall instead. They could be living next door. But, I think it's just, there are good things and bad things that have come out of this pandemic. And I'm hoping that is one of the good things that comes out of it. I'm hoping that people are more fluid in terms of their working relationships as well. And they're just how they process things. And we don't go back to the way that it was. Obviously, we have to bring in some of the past, because we can't continue in just this way either.
So, Robin, my last question for you is, you are making a change to other people's lives through coaching. What have you learned about yourself through coaching, actually doing the job, having clients? What have you learned about yourself?
That is a very good question. Nobody's asked me that question before. I've learned more about my own personal values. When we did the coach training, we didn't, as a collective of trainee coaches, we all felt we didn't spend that much time or as much time on it as we really wanted to, because it awakened things in us. So I think for me, yeah, that was a huge thing in terms of and being able to bring that to the sessions. But I think I've learned so much about myself. I've learned, as you say, in terms of the business model that I had in my mind before all of this, it's changed completely. And I am hoping that it's going to be largely digital for the foreseeable future, because it has opened up the market completely, but it makes it more competitive as well, because beforehand you'd have only had to compete with local coaches. Now I've got to compete with everybody. So it's sharpened my mind a little bit to that. But it's allowed me to work in areas that I previously hadn't done before. I mean, I as you said at the beginning, I have a background in food manufacturing. So now I'm speaking, now I'm coaching teachers, I'm coaching other people in the public sector, coaching people from all walks of life that I would never have met. And I've had no opportunity to meet and to make a difference in their lives, however small, is just phenomenal. I mean, it really is, and it's a treat to be able to coach, and it's a treat to be coached as well. It's a treat to talk to other coaches that just unlock little things in you as well. And just sharing best practice, I think, is great.
So every year I choose a sort of focus word for myself, and this year the word was growth.
Mm-hmm.
I started the podcast, I think the first one went out about the 6th of December. For me, the podcast has been just more than I could ever have dreamed about. The stories people have told me, the experiences has just been fantastic. The fact that it's in different countries just blows my mind. The fact that people are approaching me now. I had a podcast yesterday with an author in America that made me cry. It was just so emotional. And for me, the technical side of thing has been my worst part of the journey. However, I'm now at a point now where I'm reasonably comfortable with it. So, Robin, do you ever have like a focus word or a mantra to focus on during that year?
It's not something I've ever done before. I mean, I guess it's probably something that I will look at going forward. And it's again, another great question. I'm not sure what it would be just now, but I think, again, I'll probably draw it back to my values and what is important to me. So, yes, I think I would pick a value, I think, for me, and to do that, because I think we're all guilty probably of setting goals at the end of the year or as we go into January, but then disappear come the end of February. But actually, there's no, you don't have to wait to the end of the year to set a goal and to have a target. You can have them at any point in time. You can set mini goals within that. And I think that for me, the coaching process really opened my eyes to some of that as well. And my own closed way of thinking before I trained up to be this. So I will now use a coach. I mean, one of the things I will try to do to work with a coach on and off now for however long I need to about different issues. So I've done full set, and somebody who thought, why would you need to speak to a coach? Now I've been somebody, okay, I've trained up as a coach, so I now understand it more. But somebody said, no, actually, yeah, please reach out for a coach. Reach out to get some of that help and support, if you like.
I mean, I think going back to the values, I guess having the word growth is like a values exercise for myself, because I believe in continuous education. Mm-hmm. We tend to think of education at school, at university, you might have work-based courses. If we can just continue to educate yourself, maybe it's a passion for something. And I've had lots of people on the podcast who've got a passion for different things, and they're educating, they're continually learning about things. And I think as we go through life, growth, education, and values comes into that. That's sort of the things we need to assess regularly, just to give us the best life we can, and to make sure we're sort of doing the right thing.
Yeah, I think that people are guilty. We're all like it, of just being on that treadmill and being the little hamster in the wheel, just turning and just doing what we need to do. But it's actually just about just having, within that coaching session, it's all about you, and it's all about just helping you think about what's important for you, what's important for your circumstances. What has changed between your 18-year-old self and your 45-year-old self? Are you living the life that you want to live, or are you living it for somebody else?
So, Robin, I think this values is such a huge section. I think possibly there could be a second podcast coming up talking about values. And
super. I mean, as we mentioned in the call, when the coaching process allows values to be introduced, it's often something that then gets revisited throughout the sort of the contracted period of time that I work with my clients. And I know that other coaches find the same as well. It is such a fascinating area to talk about, and how values are different to everybody. And what one person's value is might not even be on somebody else's list, might not even get anywhere near it, but it's something that's important to them as a person, or as part of their family or work life, whatever it may be. So it's for such a small word, it's so powerful.
So, Robin, I think we need to say, let's do another podcast and we can explore the values together, and hopefully make something useful for other people, that they can revisit this and maybe get them thinking about what their values are. So you up for that challenge?
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to it already. It is such a, I mean, that's when in the coach training, when we only spent really sort of, it was, we did coach training sort of in weekend buckets. So it was only really half a day that we spent on it, but we could have spent days on it. And it really just opened up a lot of things for us. So it's an area that I hadn't appreciated before, but is a passion. Yes.
Right. So I think we need to work something out, and we'll get pen and paper, and then we can all have a go. You can lead us all doing a sort of a mini values exercise, and give the listeners something to think about. Robin, it's been absolutely fabulous, the conversation. Hopefully everything is okay. And I thank you once again for all your patience and time to allow us to get this podcast together for a third time.
It's been a pleasure.
Thanks, Robin. Bye-bye.
Bye.
I hope you have enjoyed the conversation. Don't forget, if you have a story you would like to tell, please get in touch. My email address is allaboutyoupodcast@yahoo.com, and thank you for listening.